This is a webinar called Can Machines Demonstrate Artificial Integrity? My name is Emil. I'm a manager at PMI's Thought Leadership team. And as most of you know here, this webinar is part of our Transformation Talk series where we talk a little bit about transformational and strategic ideas, thoughts, and innovative approaches to delivering change and also creating value in organizations. Today's topic is about AI integrity and more specifically, why and how the development and deployment of AI must reflect human and societal values. So we're joined by Hamilton, who's the VP of Tales and author of a very timely and important book called Artificial Integrity. So Hamilton, it's great to have you. I mean, you're a speaker in demand, and we've been talking about doing this for quite a while. So I'm very happy to have you here.
Well, Emil, thank you very much for this kind of introduction, and of course, I'm very happy to be there too. So, very keen to engage the conversation on this very important topic with all the different audiences and people that are in that webinar. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I mean, we're the ones who should be happy. You have a very strong resume and you've done a lot of things. So it would be wrong if I read that up or tell everyone what you've done. Can you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience so they can get to know you a bit more?
Yes, of course. I'm in charge, as you said, of running and driving digital transformation and AI transformation for a company named Thales, Thales. This company is basically somehow the Lockheed Martin for Europe countries mainly. So we are specialized in defense, aerospace, space, cybersecurity, and digital services. On top of my day-to-day business activities, I'm also an author. So as you said, I've wrote the book Artificial Integrity that has been published something like 1 year from now, and I'm enjoying many productive conversation since then around the topic of how we can integrate integrity within AI systems. So of course it happens to me that I'm, let's say, joining some webinar and keynote speaking, and I am also a kind of a very how to put it, very advocate when it comes to different causes, such as the reduction of the plastic pollution around the world. So a few hats in my head, but I guess that the common point is very much about how we can, let's say, deliver good in society.
Fantastic. And we're also doing some other work with you that I hope the audience and everyone who follow PMI will see in about a half a year's time. It's connected to the conversation here. And as a matter of fact, Hamilton, I actually got your book and I was able to skim it through. And I think it's a fantastic piece of work. So I just wanted to congratulate you for that. And I wonder if you can, set this off, this conversation here, and then give us a little bit of background, why we're talking about integrity and not only the intelligence of AI in the business context. Why is it so important to talk about this as things develop?
Yeah. So I like to start this, let's say, framing when it comes to, let's say, putting some sense in terms of what do we need to talk and to, let's say, make sure that AI systems is ingrained in some kind of a way with integrity. I like to start by quoting Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett famously said, in looking for people to hire, you want to look at three qualities. One is integrity, the second one is intelligence, and the third one is energy. And he said that if they don't have the first, the other two may kill you, right? And I think this principle equally applies to many of those AI systems we use, whether it is for running our businesses or to make a living, because even though they are not human, they do have somehow a sort of intelligence, and they have energy, right? So the question for all of us is very much about how do we make sure and how do we ensure that AI systems we hire as participants in our societies are capable of something akin to what we call integrity, right? And to me, this is quite, let's say, simple in a way, at least simple to say. The difference between one that does not demonstrate this quality and the other is quite simple. As I said, the former are designed because we could, and the latter are designed because we should, right? So artificial integrity is very much just about this. It's very much about designing AI system, not because we could, but because we should, which, let's say, embark series of questions and considerations when it comes to figuring out how to make it human-centered and how to make it, let's say, running to uphold and to enable our very good intention instead of, let's say, having some system that sometimes surpass all of the agency that human can have. And so we cannot, let's say, ensure that these systems will be very much aligned with the intention in the first place. So this is very much about this. And it is also about, thinking about advancing AI development so that AI systems could be capable of mimicking that integrity over intelligence to exhibit 3 points, three very critical characteristics, exhibiting ethical, moral, and social reasoning, right? Because we know from histories, right, that having someone intelligent or having any form of intelligence is no guarantee for delivering good in society, right? So what gives us that assurance that the intelligence that we have and that we develop is very much something that enable good change, good things, and help us to make it right is this, right? Is our ethical, moral, and social intelligence in a way. So this is also about how can we, let's say, make advanced AI development for this sake, ensuring that, again, this machine with the form of intelligence that they ingrain and that they embark will be very much, let's say, secure in participating in society with any other form of intelligence that already exists, right? So something to me also that I like to mention when it comes to artificial integrity is that we need to acknowledge a few points, right? The first one is very much about ethical AI framework that exists so far. And some might argue that, okay, but, because we do already have ethical frameworks and guidelines that exist in many parts of the world and in many cases, why do we need artificial integrity for, right? And to me, my answer is very, let's say, straight to the point. Despite the proliferation of the ethical AI frameworks and guidelines that exist, right, which is actually good things in some kind of a case, the hard truth is that they remain insufficient, right? They fully remain insufficient just because they exclusively rely on external constraints that happens to, let's say, shape and, drive the AI systems processing instead of being intrinsic AI model attributes, right? So it means that in so many cases and scenarios when AI systems, process information at the, let's say, speed of a fraction of seconds, and so are able to take some kind of a decision or, let's say, take some action in a kind of a speed that very much surpass what any human being is able to do in his earth. For sure, when you think about critical application of those kind of a machine, the external gate rules that happens to, let's say, put some external constraints with human oversight to those systems is not enough, right? So this is also one of the critical reasons that more than just having machine capable of mimicking intelligence, we very much need to make sure that this form of intelligence is driven by the compass of our human value by a compass of, let's say, what we decide to be the different, let's say, lines, red lines that the machines do not, let's say, cross. And so, this is, let's say, a kind of a mechanical guarantees that those functionings will be very much serving the good cause and the good intention, which is basically at least in the, let's say, borders of what we, let's say, decide to make as human with the machine, right?
Hmm.
So artificial integrity is very much about this. I can talk to this about, hours and hours and hours, but just to sum up, is that, thinking about a kind of a machine that will be very much about delivering the outcome coming from
Hmm.
different processing and this form of new intelligence with a kind of, let's say, approach allowing to not just having things delivering the right outcome, but very much having things done in a way that they do the right things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's so well articulated. And w when I read the book, there were three words that stood out to me, and that's trust, like building trust and reliability with the process, and also human centricity in all of this, like bringing in the values and the moral compass in the way AI actually make recommendations and how to kind of react to and absorb those recommendations in the work that you do or whatever you want to do with the output. That's fantastic. Now we're obviously we're from PMI and Brightline, so we focus on most of the time execution. So bridging the gap between strategy and delivering the value in the work, and specifically through project management. So how can you bring this to the context of that? Why artificial integrity in project management, let's say?
Yeah.
Why is it important?
Yeah, of course. And I think, when it comes to project management, what I'm thinking about is very much those kind of a task, right, that we do, no matter, let's say, the industry we are in, those kind of a task that we do, whether we are, let's say, doing it in project mode or in any kind of other mode, there is a very, let's say, critical point at stake, right, today and nowadays when it comes to AI systems versus human collaboration and human, let's say, productivities when it comes to the different activities that we're running, right? So, yeah, I think if I look at, let's say, project activities, no matter the project activities you want to drive and you want to run, AI is there not just to assist project, right? And I think this is very much important because AI assistants are not just tools. They are, let's say, decision makers, intermediaries, and companions, which give them a kind of a, let's say, qualification of becoming and being more than just the tools, right? So AI systems are not just, let's say, there just to assist project. And basically, it shapes, or let's say reshapes, what makes the project counts, right? And I think this is, to me, the first thing that is very much important to understand. So we are assisting in a kind of a reshaping and reconfiguration of what makes project counts. AI tool, whether, let's say, if you think about, planning or decision support or automation or performance tracking, they are subtly redefining how we approach project work, right?
Mhm.
Let's put it this way, right? In the kind of a project, you have deadlines. With AI systems involved, deadlines becomes predictions.
Mhm.
In any kind of a project, of course, you have priorities. When AI systems is part of the play and is part of the game, priorities become algorithmic rankings. And in a kind of a project, you think about feasibilities, right? Whether it is about cost, let's say the needs, and so on and so forth. with the AI systems into play, those feasibility considerations becomes AI recommendation.
Mm.
So it very much reshape the project work in itself, and it is very essence, right? And in this shift, project activities, risk, are becoming simulations of success, optimized for metrics, but detached from deeper purpose or meaning, right? So we can, let's say, we can see a kind of a situation of or a world where you will have some project, and very complex one, where with those algorithmic power, we will be able to mimic many of the actions and many of the kind of a collaboration that needs to be at play when it comes to delivering a specific outcomes, to predict success and optimize for that for such a kind of a production and prediction without having that much, let's say, human resources involved, right? A bit like it is a kind of a, it will be a kind of a virtual game, right, in a way. So you can play and replay in many kind of a scenario mode, let's say the motion of each and everything that needs to happen from a kind of a project perspective, and to choose the scenario that, let's say, fit the best to, let's say, the deliverable and the desirable icon that you look at for. So it changed completely the logic and the rational and the interplay when it comes to working in project mode, no matter the activities that you're running, right?
Mm.
So bottom line, I think that this form of intelligence is very much a form of an enabler that may increase project efficiency, and basically artificial integrity in such a kind of a setting is there to protect the sense making, right, of the project itself. When I say the sense making, I'm thinking about its original intention, right, in the way. I'm thinking about the specific context. Of course, that is not a fixed pie that evolve because of different parameters that needs to be
Mm.
taken into account in any kind of a project. And of course, I'm thinking also about the human accountability, because we cannot have, let's say, a machine running a specific scenario, no matter, let's say, perfect the scenario is, without thinking about what is it to be, let's say, relying on the human shoulder at the end in terms of accountability. So artificial integrity is there to, let's say, give to the systems a kind of awareness in terms of no matter the preparation, no matter the scenario, no matter the assumptions that is taken into account, and no matter the sophistication of it, the real life, the real world is messy. The
Mm.
real life and the real world is unpredictable, right?
Mm.
We can, let's say, touch a form of excellence when it comes to predictability, but let's not confuse such a kind of excellence with what the reality will be, right? At its very moment. The very essence of the excellence of any kind of a project managers is to deal with such a requires agility and adaptability to always deliver the outcome, even though sometimes the, let's say, means and the resources to deliver needs to be invented on the go, right?
Mm.
So this is to me what artificial integrity will be in a kind of a project setting, giving an edge to any, let's say, of us when it comes to delivering project, let's say, activities. And even though we think about very complex projects, while staying in a kind of a place where it still rely on human activities and intelligence when it comes to making sure what is running is very much aligned with the original intention, making sure that we always have, let's say, agency when it comes to making, let's say, decisions that let's say, at least needs to, let's say, connect the dots with a specific context that has made change, for example. And at the end of the day, and at each and every part of the processing, no matter what is the mix of the decision makings in such a kind of a setting, uh, having, let's say, a full responsibility as human and a full accountability in terms of what is it delivered, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
this is to me, let's say, one of the points that I can, let's say, emphasize on when it comes to the activities of projects, let's say, type of work and task in correlation with those systems, and especially when it comes to systems that will be integrated with a form of artificial integrity. Another point I would like also to mention is that when you think about project activities, you of course think about coordination and delegation of tasks to sometimes many people, right?
Hmm.
And those delegation activities comes with a kind of a delegated decision, right?
Hmm.
And delegated decision are still decision, right? So when it comes to AI systems, and when you think about settings when you're running projects and you, let's say, leverage AI systems, you will be delegating decisions not only to, let's say, different people but also to machine.
Hmm.
And in that setting, again, those delegated decisions are still decision.
Hmm.
And there is a kind of a trap that, let's say, might happen when it comes to delegation. It happens when it comes to delegation from one human to another. No surprise that it will be happening with machine, which is that sometimes we forget about the point that delegating the decisions doesn't remove the responsibility to the people that delegating in the first place.
Hmm.
However, when you delegate to machine, in many cases, you might delegate activities that machine will be delivering way more better than any human can do.
Hmm.
And sometimes you might delegate activities that machine, and I would say only machine, will be able to do it because it is a kind of a deal with such a kind of a complexities, analyzing ton of data and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So you might, let's say, find yourself in such a kind of a, let's say, situation where you're not enough with your very own intelligence, whether it is your very own or whether it is, let's say, the intelligence that exists in your whole organization. You will not be enough to, let's say, have a kind of a critical eyes when it comes to validate whether the machine has been doing something right or wrong.
Hmm.
So this also is very critical because such a kind of AI systems without any form of integrity might put at risk not only the project, but the very original intentions behind the project, right? And so, of
Hmm.
course, this might affect directly societies.
Yeah.
So this is also one key point that I wanted to mention when it comes to artificial integrity, which is very kind of a, let's say, concrete. Of course, we are going to delegate activities to some of those machines to deliver more efficiency and also to run some activities and some tasks that we cannot run by ourselves as humans, right? Let's be
Hmm.
frank about this. So it means that even though this is, let's say, some kind of activities that we cannot run by ourselves, we need to, let's say, make sure that those systems, as part of their processing and as part of their operating systems in a way, are very much capable of such a form of integrity, right?
Hmm.
Which means making sure that even though they surpass what we are capable of, they are not, let's say, going to use this advantage at our expense.
Yeah. Right. And this entire discourse is so multidimensional, so multifaceted. If you think about it from it doesn't matter if you're a product manager or something else, an innovator, usage of AI. First of all, the entire space is, rapidly moving forward. Things are changing on the day in terms of what AI can do, and there are also different types of, can I say, AI systems or modules of AI that can help you in different ways too. That moves at different speeds too, and have different capabilities, can combine in different ways. That gives you different level of dexterity of and capability, right? So some of the research we've done in PMI is, which was published last year, we developed a framework called the 3A framework, where we kind of like line out the level of dexterity of of AI in product management, moving from automation to assisting to augmentation. Um, and that in itself demands different levels of artificial integrity too. Um, so yeah, I'm sure we're going to get into that because I know you have some design principles and an entire framework. So I just want to, before we get into that, Hamilton, I want to open up the floor and bring out two poll questions. So Harsh, if you're able to help with that, I'm just going to run two questions. Great. Is this viewable? Right? Yeah. So the first question is, where is your organization on its AI adoption journey? And you have a couple of options here. Don't know, not yet started, early exploration, implementation phase. You're scaling it across the organization, or it's already embedded fully in the operations. Let's give you a couple of seconds to respond here. And I think we can close it down in about 5 here, Harsh. Great. So let's make this viewable. Um, so most people, about almost half of everyone, are in early exploration or pilot mode. We have almost 40% that are in implementation phase or scaling it across the organization. So it's quite significant. Like of all the people here, we have people who are trying to do things with AI in the organization. That's great. I think it's a good nugget for you, Hamilton, to bring forward in the conversation. So let's run the second poll too. Great. So it is, to what extent is your organization's use of AI aligned with human-centered values? Don't know. And then is ranging from not aligned to fully aligned. I'll give you 5 seconds to respond to this too. All right, Harsh, I think we can close that down. Perfect. So Hamilton, here we have almost a little bit more than a third who don't know how their organization's use of AI is aligned with, integrity, what you're talking about here. And then we have a bunch that have some idea, right? But that's really good. So I want to bring that into the conversation here, Hamilton. Based on what you've seen and the work that you've done, like what are the design principles that can help, let's say, people in the audience here or anyone to embed integrity in their organization's AI systems?
Yeah. So first, I'd like to mention that embedding integrity within the functioning of AI system itself is very much a new kind of let's say research field. So this is very much something that is fully in exploration nowadays. I like to, let's say, make the analogy like few decades ago when some let's say very much specific researchers that are, let's say, known as the godfather of AI was thinking about having machine mimicking artificial, let's say, intelligence. I mean, having machine mimicking human intelligence. I think we are very much in the kind of a same, let's say, beginning, right? Thinking about machine mimicking integrity. However, I think that maybe two things that I would like to, let's say. The first, back to, let's say, the project mode, right? And the project type of activities. I think that, but I am sure that the audience is very much well, let's say, equipped in knowing what I'm going to say. But I think it is very much at the heart of many, many, many things that we are, let's say, doing as human in the societies and in the world, right? Project is not, let's say, reduced to the outcome that is delivered. And is not reduced to the value that we can perceive from, let's say, the outcome delivered. Project is also implying the kind of human energy that goes with it. And so in that sense, you can have a project that can succeed while people fail. And I think this is very critical. We can have big projects, they succeed, and at the same time, the people fail, right? And so when we look at those type of activities, we very much need to look at it not in a kind of a mechanistic point of view, but in a kind of a human-centered point of view. If you look at a mechanistic point of view, like input, and output, yeah, you don't need to have human-centered design in any kind of, let's say, technology you might want to use in the process. But the reality is that when you have an organization working to deliver something, this is a human story. This is human-centered, right? Whether you want it or not, this is part of the design. So any technology will leverage, right, to deliver on what we're trying to achieve needs to be human-centered, because if not, it creates a kind of a bias as if what we do as human was just reduced to the mechanistic, let's say, lens of the different tasks and the different output and outcome that are, let's say, shared from one to another. So this is the point that I wanted to make, right? To me, the kind of a principle that we can, let's say, have in head, right, when it comes to artificial integrity and especially artificial integrity systems, is basically, let's say, 10 elements, right? Let's put it this way, 10 elements. The first one is that we want to make sure that artificial intelligence systems will not, let's say, create diversion, right? And of course, in any kind of a project that you want to run, this is very critical. You want to make sure that the systems, the machine, any kind of a technology that you want to leverage is not going to, let's say, get rolled and make something that is not aligned with what you're trying to achieve in the first place. So we want to make sure that those technologies are not creating diversion, right? So the use of such a kind of a technology for purpose or in a role not intended by its designer and or by the organization is very much at stake. You want to make sure that the intention that is behind the action is always at the heart of the action, even though this is something that you delegate to any machine. So that's very much critical, number one. So it means that this is an invitation for, let's say, users to check, to test, to validate, and to, let's say, make sure that whether, let's say, the action that is delegated to the machine, the intention behind stay at the heart and are not, let's say, diverse from, let's say, the original standpoint that we, have been designing in the first place. The second point is, to me, the phenomenon that I'm calling the loophole exploitation. The loophole exploitation, this is basically the absence of necessary steps or features due to, let's say, the fact that they have not been they have not been, let's say, developed in the first place, and therefore those different steps and features are not present in the system operational logic, right? And so this create a kind of a functional loophole or void, right? A bit like in the analogy with the Lego loophole, and this is a kind of a, let's say, risk that exists in many technologies. This is not, let's say, something that is, let's say, reduced to AI systems. But in the particular case of AI systems, those loopholes might lead the user to, let's say, delegate action to the machine without knowing that at the end, the actions will be done in a certain way that surprise and that maybe, let's say, disalign with how the, let's say, users wanted to, let's say, the action or the task to be done, right? And so this is critical because you have some action that can be, let's say, execute in many kind of a way, and we don't care the kind of a way it is going to be executed, all right? But there is some other actions where the delivery or the, let's say, outcome at the end matter as much as how you are delivering it, how you are
Mm-hmm.
doing it, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in any human organization, right? As we said, all necessary means to an end are not always, valid, right? So this is to me also a second very critical point, which is artificial integrity systems in a way is well equipped and well thought in such a kind of a features and setting, so they are not exploiting loophole in terms of expectation of the way the action should be delivered, right? Thinking about not only the performance in terms of the result of the action, but thinking also about what is it the definition of doing it right, right? The third principles to me is, let's say, the absence of safeguards when it comes to security and safety.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, using AI systems, they are not, let's say, equally distributed when it comes to their capabilities of safeguard and, let's say, safety. So the kind of a principle that you want to, let's say, make sure that your system do have is very much the gauge rules and the security, let's say, features embedded in the functioning of the systems that prevent any kind of a danger or any kind of a risk to happen, right? Whether it is, let's say, linkage of data, for example, or
Right.
kind of a irreversible, let's say, irreversible consequences or effects that might happening and that might endangers any kind of a, let's say, situation or consideration, and especially when it comes to human lives. So safeguard is very much a kind of a principle that makes sense when it comes to the use of AI systems, and you want to, let's say, of course, use the ones that do have such a kind of a features embedded in there, right? There is another point which is about what I'm calling alienation tentative of AI systems, right? Such as the creation of automatic behaviors or conditioned response, a bit akin like, the kind of Pavlovian reflexes
Mm-hmm.
that will diminish or eliminate the user's capacity for reflection and judgment, right? Which ultimately lead to a kind of a gradual erosion of their decision-making sovereignty and consequently their free will, right? So of course, and I really want to, let's say, address that elephant in the room. This is not happening from scratch and from one day to another. This is happening silently, insidiously. It takes times, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
happens. It happens to any users. You might think about, young people, children, and so on that might be more at risk than adults. This is not true, right? It happened equally to any of them, no matter the age, because we do have a common point when it comes to, let's say, our cognitive capability, which is the different, let's say, the different, let's say, element that, let's say, happens to be the reward systems of our brain, right?
Mhm.
Which are, let's say, very, let's say, weaknesses when it comes to addiction and when it comes to alienation, right?
Mhm.
So, because we are human, this is very, let's say, our capacity to be, how to put it, to be fragile when it comes to such a kind of a things. And so let's not minimize or think that this has no consequences. Of course, some of those functioning when it comes to the way AI systems has been developed may sometimes, and more than we think, may sometimes, let's say, use such a kind of, let's say, weaknesses that are very much, let's say, basic to any human being for the sake of engagement, for the sake of, let's say, usage and so on and so forth, right? For the sake of
Mhm.
adoption and such a kind of a things. So, bottom line, you really want to use such a kind of a AI systems that don't exploit such a kind of a weaknesses that very much exist of the human brain settings, just for the sake of, let's say, benefiting to usage and to adoption. There is also another point related to, let's say, systems and AI systems in particular, which is the cultural friction.
Mhm.
And I'm sure AI, let's say, project managers, let's say professionals know very well about that. When it comes to delivering a project, you want to know the culture. You want to, let's say, be aware about any kind of a sensitivity related to culture that needs to be
Right.
acknowledged, right? To exchange and coordinate and communicate the right way with the different parties. So when you, let's say, have those systems involved in the motion, you really want to have AI systems that will not create any additional burden or frictions when it comes to culture, right? This is one of the other things to manage when it comes to projects and when it comes to any kind of activities. And you don't want to have any addition of complexities to that because of AI systems, meaning that you really want to avoid contradiction or conflict, right, between the logical framework imposed or that, let's say, that the AI systems influence, right? And the values and the principles, let's say, of the organizational culture, right? Something that people sometimes forget about is that AI systems are taught in a kind of a certain logic. And so, in a way, that logic is a kind of a bridge that make the AI systems inheriting from the cultures of the people that have been developing the system, right?
Mhm.
So, in such a kind of a way, the design of the systems, right? And when I'm saying design, I'm thinking about anything that happens to, let's say, be critical for design, right? Features, but also the set of data on which the AI system has been trained. Anything that design the systems is very much ingrained with a certain culture, whether it is a culture with a E at the end or a cultures, let's say, cultures with a S, right?
Mhm.
And so you want to know when it comes to using such a kind of a systems, where you take a risk from a kind of a cultural setting in using it with, let's say, this organization versus the other and so on and so forth. So this is also a kind of a matter when it comes to, let's say, artificial integrity. Of course, there is a very, let's say, critical point when it comes to transparency also as well. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Those systems are, let's say, processing data and are processing some kind of a prompt that you,
Hmm.
let's say, give to the machine so that it can, let's say, answers or generate any kind of a outcome. And
Right.
this is, let's say, for you, let's say, a kind of a way to be informed about what kind of decisions to take, for example. This is a way for you to execute on your daily task, whether it is about a project or not.
Mm.
Or whether you want to be very much aware when it comes to how is it that the systems has come to this conclusion,
Hmm.
from which, let's say, information, data, or sources the systems have been building to deliver this outcome. So you can have a chance, right, to check and to exercise your critical thinking regarding what the systems is delivering, right?
Yeah.
So these transparency layers, which let's say, connect the dot with the explainability capability of the systems, and more than the explainability, the interpretability, right? The interpretability capacity of the systems, which means that this form of ability to align with the users, right? And to find the user where the user is in terms of knowledge, in terms of competencies, in terms of, let's say, the activities that is going on, to find the users where it is in terms of the ability to disclaim how is it that I'm, let's say, executing such a kind of a task, and how is it that I'm giving you some kind of elements that will, let's say, give you and enable you to exercise your agency when it comes to criticize, take some of the elements that I'm delivering as AI systems or not, right? So
Yeah.
transparency is also an element that is critical. And maybe I want to, let's say, highlight the last point, which is we talked about alienation earlier, and I
Hmm.
think I want to differentiate alienation from addiction, right?
Hmm.
Because when it comes to AI systems, and again, it is not special to AI systems, it is very much also existing to many technologies that we use, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to those systems, because of the presence of some kind of a features based on gamification, instant graphic gratification, or micro reward systems specifically designed to hack again, right, the user motivation circuit. This has an effect. The effect is quite very, let's say, well documented in the neuroscience field. It activates a kind of a neurological reward mechanism, right?
Mm.
Which is dopamine, serotonin, no, how you call it, norepinephrine, those kind of things, right?
Hmm.
And this trigger repetitive, compulsive, and addictive behaviors, right? So as
Yeah.
we know it, these mechanisms can lead to emotional decompensation as a kind of a form of compensatory refuge and self-reinforcing cycles, right? So you are exposed each and every day if you are using social networks, if you are using many kind of other technologies, you are exposed with such a kind of a things every day, right? At certain level and at certain degree, depending on your usage. And you are exposed to that because of notifications, the likes, for example, or I'm thinking also about that infinite scroll algorithms, when you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling again in your laptop, on your tablet or whatsoever without, knowing what you are looking for by scrolling.
Mm.
I'm thinking about the visual or sound bonuses. I'm thinking about the levels that you reach through point systems, badges, ranks, scores, and so on and so forth. And all of this is very much used to create and sustain user engagement, right? and of course, with a kind of a exponential, let's say, cycle and manner, with the goal of, let's say, generating that engagement very in a kind of a lasting way, right? So this that in many of those technology that you might use is very much existing in AI systems, right? The point is that when it comes to AI systems, it is even more powerful because it is ingrained in the algorithm in many ways. For example, when you look at your favorite, let's say, chatbot, and you ask, a question, you might have seen in some, let's say, cases, and it happens many times, that not only you get an answer, but you get a question at the end, right? You get a question
Yeah.
at the end like, oh, do you want me to do this? Or do you want me to, let's say, deep dive on such aspect? Or do you want me to synthesize? Or do you want me to do this and this and that? And these are, let's say, part of it, right? These are very much part of those very much, let's say, mechanisms that activate that neurological reward mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
Because you might be surprised asking to that favorite chatbot that you want something that at the first place you was not very much searching for, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So long story short, let's say, I described few principles. Early on, I've said there is 10. I don't know if I, let's say, describe 10 of it, but at least it gives a sense in terms of how much it is important for AI systems, right, to be checked from all
Hmm.
those different elements that have, let's say, that have been described, to be checked from that, so that you get a chance to evaluate the risk that you take in using it. So another way to say it is that even though we are still works to do when it comes to ingraining integrity in AI systems, at least those different principles that I was describing is a form of a checklist for us as users to be aware and to be very well equipped in terms of the level of risk that we are taking when it comes to using this or the other one systems for the project that we want to run, right? Because we are aware about the risk, we get a chance to put some, let's say, countermeasures and verification and let's say audit, right,
Yeah.
at the right moment in the right place to minimize, let's say, some kind of a bad effect that may happen because of the usage of such a systems. And I know project teams are very well, let's say, minded when it comes to managing risk. So long story short, let's say, answering your point, Emil, but wanted to take that occasions to deep dive in details in such a topic.
Yeah. No, I mean, Hamilton, that's very, very useful and rich in terms of like what you're talking about, how the different layers and considerations that you should have when you actually implement and use AI. I think that's fascinating. We only have a couple of minutes, and I want to bring in at least one question from the audience. I'm going to combine with two. So we have one MVP who asked a couple of questions. Most valuable player, who is Miss Rika. So I'm going to use one of her questions and combine it with Valentine. And the question is around like who at the organizational level should own the ethical guidelines. So how do you kind of like embed this in an organization, like the thinking around artificial integrity? And Valentine also asked if I implement AI and its knowledge grows over time, who or how checks or audits that the decisions and the answers are as expected and aligned properly. So how do you check like the usage of AI in the organization essentially, and who owns that process?
Yeah. So I love that question because when you when you have, let's say, people asking actually who is in charge of, let's say, setting the rule of the game in the first place, and who is checking. When you get such a kind of a question, this is a very good beginning because it starts by this simple question, right? And you'll be surprised in many organizations when you ask such a question, you have nobody,
Yeah.
right? So first, good news. This is the critical questions, and please go back to your organization and challenge, the different layers of your, let's say, setting with such a kind of a question. Second point, I will, let's say that two things. First, you want to establish at company level, let's say, a robust muscle, right? When it comes to defining what is, let's say, the right things to do when it comes to working, whether it is about collaborating with human or collaborating with machine. You want to have a clear set of definition, guidelines, and framework in place at company level with such aspect. Number one. Number two, you don't need to start from scratch because in many companies, you have ethical guidelines that already exist, right? And in many companies, such a kind of ethical guidelines are already in motion when it comes to checking, when it comes to auditing, okay?
Mhm.
So the point is very much about looking at, let's say, your existing ethical guidelines and figuring out with the new lens, how is it that those new or that how is it that those existing ethical guidelines need to evolve considering collaboration between human and machine? That's very much the case, right? You will see very quickly that you need to make your guidelines evolve. And you will see very quickly that, some of those guidelines are very much not enough and you need to put new one in the set, right? And so basically it will lead the question in terms of, okay, but now that we have made our ethical guidelines and what is the definition of doing good in our company, well refreshed and well established, what does it mean in terms of monitoring, checking, and auditing to make sure
Mhm.
that we let's say continue to ensure that those different, let's say, guidelines that we have been refreshing is very much setting the pace of how we do things in this company or in this organization, right?
Yeah.
So to me, this is something, right, as a kind of a let's say, company-wise, let's say, approach that I will, let's say, encourage to do.
Yeah.
Another point related to that is that you, as a project manager, you also can define your ethical stance when it comes to the way you want the projects to be delivered, because you have some specificities to take into account, whether it is about the different teams that are involved, the different culture that are into play, the different constraints that you're dealing with, right? So you also want, beyond having a planning, beyond having a budget, beyond having those type of elements, right? You also maybe want to, let's say, define with, the different stakeholders, what is it that we want to agree on when it comes to the ethical stances that will
Mhm.
guide our different efforts, so that when we have conflict in terms of objectives, when we have extreme constraints in a way, when we have opposite views and so on and so forth, it happens in any kind of a project, at least we have that compass in terms of how do we agree to behave between us to deliver. And so, same story, these settings, this kind of a definition, answering the question in terms of how do we agree to deliver good and to deliver the right way, needs to imply and needs to involve the reasoning in terms of how is it that we do collaborating with machine.
Yeah.
And same things as part of the project, let's say, execution, you have to put in place the gauge roles, the mechanisms that, let's say, will check that the organization setting, implying, let's say, the machine and the systems that we are relying on to delivering, will be auditing at the right moment, the right place, and so on and so forth, so that we stay on track, not only from a planning and budget and deliverable perspective, but also from a kind of a, let's say, ethical stances, right? Whether it is about collaborating between us and whether it is about collaborating with machines.
Fantastic. We're actually, Hamilton, I think we could go on for, additional 30 minutes. There's enough questions and appetite for that. I see that. If you would just summarize or give one thing that you want the audience to bring with them from the conversation today, what would that be? If you can also do that maybe in 30 seconds or so before we close off.
Yeah, I think I will say that when it comes to AI systems and when it comes to artificial integrity, we need to, let's say, also pay attention to our very own responsibility as human, right? And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying that we are not doing that we are not doing so. I'm saying that there is many reasons for which we might think that we are, let's say, paying attention to our responsibilities, but because we are not perfect, and because that neurological, let's say, aspect of it that I was describing earlier, we might not seeing us, doing something that is actually not in the direction of the intention that we have, right? So to me, I think there is one important critical point that we need to acknowledge and that we need to challenge ourselves each and every day about, which is our critical thinking, right? This is the best secret weapon that we have as human for any kind of a decisions we want to take, right? Whether it is professionally or personally. So the best gauge rules that we can put in place for ourselves is to make sure that in any kind of a conversation, collaboration, action, and ways of delivering things, we make sure that the critical thinking has been exercised. The critical thinking has been exercised. And I think this is a very easy game to play, right? Because it happens nowadays with those very, let's say, somehow intelligent systems that we use. It happens nowadays for the sake of a time, for example, that we just, forget about checking, forget about exercising or critical thinking, right? And this is a trap on which each and every one of us can fall very, let's say, easily. So my very much last but not least word will be very much to say that, right? And especially when it comes to project, because I love to say that a project is very much the delivery of an intention, hopefully for good and to make something advance in societies, no matter, let's say, the project that is delivering. I think that being, let's say, very loyal when it comes to exercising our critical thinking anytime, no matter, let's say, the help and the enablement that we, let's say, have been benefiting from the machine, I think this is something that will give us, right, the best guarantee to, let's say, have a kind of a use of such a kind of a technologies the right way.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Hamilton. I mean, again, this has been a really insightful conversation. Please make sure that you follow Hamilton and all his work because, yeah, he's a leader in the space. So there's going to be more coming from you. I'm absolutely sure about that. So that said, thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and we'll reach out shortly.
Thank you, Emil, and thank you to all the teams. I wanted to take a few seconds to acknowledge the great work that you guys are doing for the world communities of PMI and project manager professional. And thank you to all the audience. It be my pleasure to share some of my thoughts around this, let's say, a very passionate time that we are living with such a kind of intelligent systems and technologies that we can use for good. Thank you all and take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.